Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. And I'm Michelle Lagare, founder and president of Q360. It is my pleasure to have you here, guys, and really to spend some time in learning, of course, especially during this time. Medyo, we're already leaning towards the Christmas parties and year-end celebrations. But glad to see everyone here and those who are still coming in to invest their time in improving your software quality engineering practices. Anyone here na naka-attend na before from our webinars or even the physical meetups? Send it in the comment section if you have attended previous meetups, even in the Software Testing Philippines meetups na face-to-face or even the online ones. Watching from the island of Pasig. Okay, that's nice. Watching from home. That's good to hear. So I'm excited to share this time with you guys on our on our webinar. Today we'll be hearing from our enthusiastic quality engineers from Q360, of course. With me are Abby, Deo, Brian, EJ, Janella, JG, Kirby, and Sean. Maraming J sa amin. And you see them speak later on. Okay, so we are QE360. We provide outsourced testing training, outsourced testing services, and QA consulting services. Our tagline is doing more with less because of our skills as quality engineers. We can do both manual and automation tasks. And with that, we get to do more with less. And we are hybrids of QAs and QEs. So we're tapping both our creativity and our technical skills in automation. So today we'll be talking about shift left testing to maximize our maximizing shift left testing through agile testing and test automation with AI. Who among you here have started with their product development related sa AI? Anyone? Meron na ba? Meron sila Mark. Yeah, I know them from the meetups before. Hi, there's a viewer from Singapore. Hello. Okay, so anyone here, their company, or there's also one from Poland. Hello, Adrian. Has anyone here have started their product development that has anything to do with AI? None yet? Okay, but at least, diba, we are getting prepared to get to that point because it's hard when you're already there, you need to develop the software with AI, and then you don't know, you don't have any idea on how you're gonna test it. So today we're gonna help you with that. So let's kick it off. So shift left testing. In this webinar, we'll be sharing how we can accelerate testing and amplify quality through agile testing and test automation by leveraging on AI. First, let's define shift left testing. So shift left testing is a proactive approach that advocates from moving the testing phase earlier in the software development lifecycle. Diba? Compared to waterfall, wherein you have the requirements analysis, planning, design, coding, and then testing. Diba? Parang you're further closest to the to the development or the release itself. So when we say shift left, you want to do the testing very early on the SDLC. So with this, we need to promote principles such as early involvement of the test team, continuous feedback, collaboration between devs, testers, and stakeholders. We're not going to be active only when we're already in the testing phase or when the product is already ready for, it has been developed and ready for testing. Okay, so you might be asking, why is it important to switch to shift left testing? So first, it reduces cost. It minimizes the cost of fixing defects as we can already identify issues even from the requirement analysis or sprint refinement if you're following Agile. And then secondly, you can improve the quality. Due to the proactive nature of the shift left testing, we get to deliver high quality software with fewer defects, resulting in increased customer satisfaction. Because even from the requirements, the design, we get to test them already. Okay. And then number three, is the faster time to market. So for those people who are in the management or the business owners, the stakeholders, this is very critical for them. And of course, as QAs, QEs, we will also benefit from this. The more na we get to deliver faster, we get to get a bigger market share. Of course, it also trickles to your level. Okay, so with the early testing and continuous feedback, software products can be released faster, gaining a competitive edge in the market, di ba? As you have seen during the pandemic, some companies already folded because they were not able to deliver or they were not able to pivot. So it's very important to really to switch mindset. So in this webinar, the Q360 team will be sharing with you how we help our clients get a bigger market share by delivering high quality software in a faster manner by maximizing shift left through the agile testing and test automation with AI.
Hello everyone, I am JJ, and before we dig deeper into Agile testing, who among you here are supporting Agile development? Kindly react heart. Okay, seeing quite number of heart reacts there. So now that we know that most of you are supporting Agile, how many of you are using test charters? React heart again. All right, quite fewer than the last one. So, agile development is a very common practice, not just here in the Philippines, but even with our clients in different countries. However, the practice of using test cases is still present despite the agile methodology. Sometimes it's the client's requirement, sometimes they're just not aware that there's an actual different test approach in agile development. And one of the agile testing approaches is exploratory testing. James Bach, the father of exploratory testing, defines it as something that involves simultaneous learning, test design, and test execution. In detail, exploratory testing uses test charters, not test cases, in the form of mind maps. Second, it explores the system during testing. Third, it allows the accordion type of time management for test creation, not limited to the tests currently available. Accordion type meaning we adjust tests based on time given. If the time allotment is short, we do high level tests. If it is longer, then we do more detailed tests. And lastly, each user story has a set of test charters and can be estimated, also known as a session or the uninterrupted period of time for actual testing. We don't have to necessarily follow this specific format, but by the way we create our test charters, we essentially cover these. So we explore the area of interest with the resources, what does it have or not have, pages, sections, fields, buttons, etc. Constraints, for example, acceptable or non-acceptable values, tools and others, in order to discover information, which is typically the behavior of the feature. For example, we have a user story here. As a registered user, I want to be able to log into the system so that I can access my account and its features. And here's a snippet of a test charter that tests our user story. So as you can see here on the left side, we have the user story name, login, as well as the session, which is 15 minutes. And on the right-hand side, we have here the tests. So there are two tests for valid, invalid credentials, three tests for different account states, one test for page redirection, and two tests for error handling. And that's just one user story in a sprint. Since each sprint has multiple user stories covered with their own test charters. To explain further in detail, we will show you a demo of exploratory testing using MindMap.
Now I am going to show you how we create test charters, not test cases, using MindMap, which is a more seamless visualization of the tests that we are going to perform. We have here the root node, and then the user stories, and then let me expand this. There we go. We now have the pages and or the tests themselves. Let me compress this one. There we go. So the ability to create tests based on the exploration of the app engages our creativity with the tests that we are going to perform, as we are not bound by the restrictions of the traditional test cases. And that's how we can unveil more defects. For example, we have here the login user story. And as you can see here, we already have a set of tests that we are going to perform. But as we can see on the app, we can add additional validations, such as the other usernames that are going to be accepted by the app. So we have these four. So we can add these four as part of the validation for the user story. So let me just add that one. So now we have added the four additional validations. And if you're wondering why I haven't added this one, the lockout user, it's because it's already part of the initial test validation. So we can do the same for the rest of the user stories as we go through them. We can expand the map in order to see more tests in each user story. We can also update the status of each test. So if this one passed, we can mark it as passed, and if this one failed, we can mark this one as failed. So as you can see here, the visualization that MindMap provides allows us to test more effectively and efficiently, as well as allowing easier interpretation of results at a glance.
In a nutshell, exploratory testing is a shift in mindset as it offers increased flexibility and adaptability, improved defect detection, a deeper understanding of the system, and ultimately delivering a higher quality product. Now that we have covered test creation and execution through exploratory testing, let's proceed to defect management.
Hello, good afternoon, Kirby here. So let's now move on to defect management. So in the dynamic and iterative landscape of agile software development, efficient defect management is very crucial for delivering high quality products like we all want. And as QAs or QEs, our job goes beyond mere issue tracking, and it is a collaborative approach and, and an iterative process at identifying, reporting, and resolving software defects that we report. So in the next slide, I will show you what is an example of a good defect management.
Since Agile defect management thrives on detailed and complete information, the first thing we need to do is to ensure when we file our tickets is that it contains all the necessary details our developers might need to fix it. Some of which are these ones like prerequisites like admin credentials, SUT versions, URLs, and etc. Also, it's very important for a clear, concise, and easy to follow steps to reproduce and test. And also, another important part are the expected and actual results. Furthermore, having the following will make our tickets more complete. So screenshots, at the very least, should be included in our tickets as it shows the actual issue at hand. Also, attaching a video recording is more intuitive if there are some complex steps in our issue that we filed that needs to be shown where images may not suffice. Environment details like OS or browser or even browser versions, as some defects can be environment specific, so it will be useful if that's included in our tickets. Timestamps, it goes hand in hand with the logs. So why it can be used to filter the logs and makes reading those verbose logs easier. And logs are a bit technical, but it can really give a good insight to the developers on why the defect is occurring. For example, this log here is generated from a robot framework code, which shows why the test is failing. And as QEs, since we also have a technical background, adding a bit of analysis on our tickets on what caused the bug can, help our developers get a head start in fixing the issue. And also for easier visibility and tracking, we can also add labels, severity, and also we can link issues to our tickets. And uh, always remember to add our bug tickets to the correct sprints.
So upon the identification and documentation of a defect, like shown earlier, the next step is all to assign it to the appropriate developer, as unassigned tickets, can be easily missed during sprints. So how we can do this? So we can utilize webhooks in ensuring that the assignees are aware that there are updates on the tickets that are assigned to them. And as shown is in your screens, it is good to note that using Slack for this webhook integration is good, as Slack is one of the most common applications used in tech companies for communication. So if you're using Slack in your companies or in your work, so you can comment something in the live stream. And additionally, Slack offers modification of notification settings as necessary so that you won't be flooded by much notifications. Lastly, so for complex or critical defects, agile teams may conduct triage calls. Uh, these calls bring together relevant stakeholders to prioritize and assess severities of defects, allowing for strategic decision making with the product owner on which issues to address first based on the business impact. And as defect management in Agile is, again, I mentioned earlier, an iterative process, Scrum teams need to follow up on the status of the defect until its closure. So ensuring that resolutions are implemented, tested, and validated. So overall, an active involvement from us QAs will ensure comprehensive defect information, detailed analysis, and transparent communication, which leads to a faster fixes and continuous improvement in the software development cycle. So now, let's delve into another concept, which is the definition of done in Agile, a key framework that outlines the criteria of a user story that we must meet in order to be considered completed.
So before we work on a sprint, the Scrum team needs to have a definition of done. In the next slides, we will show you what the definition of done is. So in Agile, the definition of done is an agreement between product team on a set of conditions that must be true in order to consider backlog items truly done. To maximize QA capabilities, here are some criteria that we can add. So acceptance criteria must be met so that the whole team can know if the issue story is tested within the project requirements and is ready for production. Another one is automating acceptance criteria. The function, integration, and regression tests help deliver its faster regardless the number of regression tests. Another way to make sure that your testing is more efficient is to make API tests, which is the backbone of the system, and that the rest would be up to the consensus of the team. For team capacity planning for each member, we have to take note of two things. So number one would be working number of working days in a sprint. So this considers the potential use of each Scrum team member, and number two would be productive hours to get the team capacity. Time estimation also plays an important role when considering what can be included in the definition of time. So the more matured Scrum teams would be have a complex definition of time, and will inevitably produce higher time estimation per task. In the example I've shown earlier, they have test automation tasks instead of just creating and executing tests. We will now show a demo of team capacity planning.
When we do team capacity planning, we need to consider the number of working days in a sprint and productive hours per resource to give us the team capacity for the sprint. Once we do the sprint planning, we provide the time estimates per task in every user story. Each user story has its own respective task that we give time estimates for. Let's assume that the sprint that we have planned here has a total of 535 hours to deliver all the tasks in the sprint. So when this happens, team capacity should be greater than or equal to the total number of time estimates in a sprint, as you can see it here. For this instance, because the team capacity is greater than the total estimated time for the sprint task, we know that we have enough time to deliver the sprint. But if the total estimated time is greater than the team capacity, then we need to negotiate with the product owner on what user stories we can bump down to the next sprint. This is how you ensure not just leveraging on test automation, but at the same time, the team can be confident in delivering the sprint.
So to recap, this is how we apply agile testing in sprint. So we follow the team capacity planning and time estimation, create and execute test charters to give you smarter ways to test, automate and run remaining tests, report bugs complete with all necessary details, including logs and analysis of what caused the bug, validate bug fixes. We utilize ticketing tool dashboards and webhooks to keep track of changes, and lastly, close the ticket real time, regardless if it's a user story or a bug.
You've seen how we apply it in the sprint. Now let's transition to the test automation phase with the help of AI. To maximize the use of AI tools, we can use BARD for test creation. So what is BARD? BARD is designed as an interface to an LLM that enables users to collaborate with generative AI. It is an experiment that is being rolled out thoughtfully and in accordance with Google's AI principles. BARD is a free AI tool designed to be secure and protect the privacy of its users. When using BARD, QA or QE are still required to review all generated tests and add additional tests. BARD serves as our assistant but doesn't entirely replace human involvement. Here are the capabilities of BART that we can leverage to help us in testing. Let's proceed with the demo to show you example of BART's capabilities. Before I start the demo, I just want to inform you all that I'm going to use the robot framework. It's in a company that is the default tool we use for automation. Just a quick background to the robot framework. It is an open source test automation framework. It provides a simple and readable syntax that allow users to create test cases using keywords. So first, test case design or creation. I'll show you how we can use BART to create a test design. By the way, I'm going to use a Swag Labs website for this demo. It is an e-commerce website. So I asked BART to create a functional and non-functional test for this screenshot, the login page. BART provided a functional and non-functional test. For tests for the functional test, BART also provide a non-functional test, which are the performance tests, security tests, traceability tests, and localization tests. Aside from that, BART also provides another example of test cases with steps and expected result for functional and non-functional tests. This example illustrates how BART can quickly generate a scenario. This can help QA or QE to save time and effort in creating test cases. Next is baseline code generation, debugging code, and control web app. So for this example, I asked BART to create a robot framework Python code for this test case. We verify that users can log in with a valid username and password, which is generated by BART earlier for the functional test. So I also include to use a Firefox browser and close the browser after running the test. Add assertion, then apply the formatting convention of robot framework, one tab space. Same goes with the usernames and password in the URL of the Swag Labs website. Best practice when we use the chat AI is to combine all you need in the prompt. So BART provide the code snippets for the test case. Let's copy the code and paste it in Visual Studio Code and run the test. When you run this test, it will fail due to a variable URL not found. So I, as part of data code after debugging this error, I copied the error from Visual Studio Code. So BART provided an explanation of the error and updated the code. So BART also mentioned to resolve this error, you need to define the URL variable before attempting to use it. So BART updated the URL variable to sourcedemo.com. So let's copy the code and run it again. You can see it still failed due to element with locator username not found. So I asked BART again to update the code and debug the error. So BART provided an explanation of the error and how to resolve it. The first is to verify the locator, wait for the element until it's visible. So BART updated the code with wait until element is visible using. So let's try to run it. And it is still fail because element username is not visible after 5 seconds. So this is an example that humans still need to review the code and update it if you can. And one of the solutions that BART provided earlier is to verify the locator. So when we go to the sourcedemo.com and inspect the username field, as you can see, we need to put dash to the username. So let's update the username with dash and remove the wait until element visible keyboard. Okay, so the test is still failed because no keyword with name as your title found. So I asked Bart to please update the code after debugging this error. No keyword with name as your title found. Okay, so Bart provided an explanation of the error and a solution and the correct keyword name for asserting the page's title should be. We're not going to copy the whole code. We're just going to update the correct keyword name for asserting the page. The title should be. And instead of my home page, I want to assert the Swag Labs title. So let's run the test. Okay. And that's it. Bart created the login test using the robot framework. I'm going to demonstrate how Bart can create code documentation. So I asked Bart to please generate a code documentation for this test, which is created by Bart earlier. I just copied it and asked for a code documentation. So Bart provided an explanation of every section of the code from switch setup, switch teardown, and the test cases. And that's the breakdown of our code documentation. It helps anyone reading the code to understand its purpose and the functionality.
Hi all, I'll now be presenting another AI tool that our team uses, and this time is for visual testing. As we all know, visual tests are as important as functional tests. However, it is mostly neglected due to it being a really tedious process. And a quick short explanation uh, this process is now made easier, simpler, and faster through the use of AI. And this tool that I'm talking about is called Applitools Eyes. What this tool does is to scan and analyze your applications just like how a human would, but with the cost of a single execution using their visual AI. And from our experience, this tool works best when testing pages such as this one, where we have to check a bunch of static information. However, please do note that Applitools Eyes will only show you what is new or what is different on your applications rather than what is wrong with what it's seeing. And it does this by tracking the versions of a page and comparing the old versions or the baselines with the new ones. This is much like how GitHub would show you what is new on your code when you push something to your repository. And this is also why human input is still very important to verify the changes that this tool was able to flag. Now, here's Shan to demonstrate some of the functionalities of this tool.
To start, this is just a quick overview of the code setup of Amplitude's Eyes. For everyone's information, we will also use Robert Framework for this demo. For those not using Robert Framework, you can visit their site's documentation for the other supported frameworks. Going back, I have already prepared all the necessary files and libraries, so all that's left to do is run this code. Now let's proceed to its website app. As you can see, I already executed the test twice, which labels Visual Test Sprint 1 and Sprint 2. This is the first run of the visual test, which will act as the baseline. As you can see on the dashboard, it executes the visual test on different operating systems, browsers, screen resolutions, and devices. All of these test cases took only 17 seconds to run. So just imagine how time consuming it would be if we were to do it manually or using an automation framework. On the second run of the visual test, You can now see that there are two versions of the pages. The left one is the baseline, which is based on our first run, and the right one is from the second run where the updates are being implemented. Amplitude size has four different match levels. The default level is strict, which detects changes between elements and components. The second level is exact, which detects changes pixel by pixel. The third one is ignore color, which is same with strict level, but just as the label suggests, it ignores the color changes. The last one is layout, which only detects changes in the page structure. So after selecting the match level, he can hide the differences by clicking on this button. So from the get-go, we will already have an idea of what the differences are. But if we want to be more technical, we can select this button, then click on one of the highlighted changes, and this will show us the specific property that have changes or differences from the baseline. And if you consider these changes acceptable, you can hit the like button, which will make these changes be part of the baseline of the next text execution. And if you don't like the changes or updates, just hit the dislike button and all the changes will not be considered. And the baseline will just stay the same. And just a reminder, we will still need to confirm the changes on the other documents. After you confirm all the changes, we can now click the save button and now we are done. Final reminder, human input is still needed when using Amplitude Sans. This will help to verify the changes that the tool was able to plug. And for further documentations and guides, you can visit the Amplitude Size tutorial page, which can be accessed through amplitudes.com/tutorials. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I am Abby, and we have just witnessed the transformative power of AI tools in enhancing test creation and visual testing. Now, how do we seamlessly integrate the tests from our web app, API, and mobile app to establish a comprehensive testing strategy for our applications and systems? But before we start, just a quick question for everyone. Who among you here use Selenium framework for web testing? So please feel free to comment or react. Or if you use a different framework or tool for web testing, please share the name of the tool or framework that you are using. Oh, I see some reaction. So for those who commented and reacted on the previous question, do you use a different tool or framework when testing the API and mobile aspect of your systems or applications? So more reactions. So thank you for your participation, everyone. So when testing, we usually have different tools and frameworks that are available depending on the system or applications that we need to test. So for example, we have Selenium for web testing, Appium for mobile testing, and Postman for API testing. However, if we use different tools and frameworks for the web, API, and mobile testing of the same app or system, this can be inefficient and make the codes harder to maintain. So furthermore, it also can add costs for licensing fees, and sometimes we encounter challenges when it comes to the comprehensive integration testing that spans across these different layers of web, API, and mobile. So as a result of this, there can be inconsistency in the reports of the overall performance of the system. So how do we solve this issue? So to solve this issue, we can use a single framework wherein we can create a unified test suite that can test the front end and at the same time the API and mobile aspect of the system. So one framework or tool that we can actually use is the robot framework. So Robot Framework is an ideal tool for the seamless integration of testing the web, API, and mobile applications due to its comprehensive support for various testing methodologies. So it also has the ability to leverage a rich ecosystem of external libraries, which empowers the tester to seamlessly integrate the web, API, and mobile tests into a unified test suite. So example of these libraries that Robot Framework support are the following. So first, we have the Selenium library, wherein Alright. So the Selenium library, so for the Selenium library, it helps the testers uh, test the data. For example, it helps in communicate. Okay, I'm sorry. So for Selenium library for web testing, this library provides a comprehensive set of keywords that the tester can use to interact with the web elements, such as the clicking of buttons, entering text into the fields, and validating the page content. So for API testing, we have request library, wherein this library allows the testers to automate the sending of HTTP requests and parse the JSON responses and verify the API behavior. So for mobile testing, we have the Appium library, wherein this library helps in testing the mobile apps across various platforms, such as the iOS, Android environments. So it also has keywords that allows the testers to interact with mobile app elements like swiping through the screen, tapping the buttons, and asserting app functionalities. So with Robot's extensive library, we can easily automate the tests that we need, and this kind of holistic approach ensures a comprehensive testing coverage of the app and system. So, to better understand and see how we utilize the framework and its libraries in integrating our tests for web and API, we will be showing you a demo.
So for this demo, we will be searching or and creating client record for both API and website validation. To demonstrate how we can use or utilize robot framework to test API or the backend simultaneously with the website or the front end, we will have an example robot script that have the following test steps. So, step one, we create a new client using the website. Step two, we assert client is accessible via the API. Step three, we search for the client on the website. And step four, we assert that the client is listed on the website. So, here we have only one a single test case. The client can be accessible using API and website. So realistically, you have different test cases for API and the website so that if one fails, you can point out what point did it fail? Did it fail in the API test or the website test? But for this example, we will merge them into a one test case. So for the first step here, we create a client. So doing that in the front end, we utilize the Selenium library of Robot Framework. So here, using the keywords from the library, wait, for example, here, I go to a certain URL, which this URL is the URL for the client list, and wait for element, which is a custom keyword that I made, which basically just contains a wait function, a wait keyword, and a click keyword. And then this is the same for the other two, which is wait for the field and then input the text, which the keywords that I'm using here are all part of the Selenium library of the robot framework. And that's for the create client. The next step here is to assert that the client is accessible using the API calls. And to use API, uh, to do API testing using robot framework, we make use of the HTTP request, yeah, HTTP request library. So using those library, we can uh, do things like we can create an API session, and then we can make a GET request from the API, which will return a response. But in this case, the response here is taken from the API call, which asks the domain if there is a client that that has an ID equal to the ID of the client that you just created. Yeah, and that's for the API call. So the next step here is to search for the client in the website itself. Again, we are using the Selenium library of Robot Framework to interact with these websites. For mobile, we can use the APIum library, but in this example, we're only using two libraries. So to search for the client here, uh, basically you just go to the client list URL and then wait for the input field to be filled, and then inputs the text or the name of the client in that field. And then here we assert that the next step is we assert that the client is accessible using the website, which after searching for the client should appear on top of the client list. And here, uh, oh, that's the wrong client. So, okay, here. So here, after we search for the client, it will uh, take the selector of the row which the client is in, and then wait for that element to be visible, and then assert that the element is visible. And if everything goes well, everything should pass. So here we open our terminal and we check if the test will pass or not. Okay, so there it is. The test passed, which means that we can access the client using the API and the website. So with this, we were able to do seamless integration with the front end and the back end test. Now for the next topic, we will do the continuous integration and development.
Now that we have a seamless integration of the test automation on different platforms, we should now utilize test automation as part of the CI/CD. But first, let's discuss CI/CD. CI/CD is a practice in Agile methodology. This involves automating various processes of the software development team, and by doing this, the team can meet the business requirements with high quality but faster development process. CI stands for continuous integration. CI is the practice of integrating all code changes into a shared code repository early and often, automatically performing tests for each changes, and can also automatically create a build. With CI, errors and issues can be identified and fixed more easily and much earlier in the development process. Once code has been tested and built as part of the CI process, CD or continuous delivery takes over during the final stages to ensure its package and everything it needs to deploy to any environment at any time. CD can cover everything from provisioning the infrastructure to deploying the application to the testing or production environment. Of course, the devs may also execute the automated test through their local machine. But a better way to do this is to incorporate the automated tests in the CI/CD pipeline. Since we will be talking more about the automated tests, we will mainly focus on CI. The advantage of including the automated tests in the CI/CD is that anyone can run this test anytime through a simple click of a button as compared to running this test locally. These tests can also be triggered by events such as a simple code change, ensuring code and product quality. Also, the automated test can be scheduled to run at specific times. For the demo, we will mainly use and talk about GitHub Actions. In our team, and as a practice, we use GitHub Actions to have automatic checks and whenever we create and update our tests in our test automation to ensure correct functionalities and that the automated tests are updated. So why GitHub Actions? GitHub is a hosted version control platform. And a lot of us may be already familiar with GitHub as it is very popular and a lot of open source projects are hosted through GitHub. With this, GitHub Actions is integrated with GitHub and we can already use its CI/CD functionalities by just having a repository project in GitHub. Lastly, the syntax to use GitHub Actions is easy to learn and is very readable, making it easier to understand. In GitHub Actions, we have what we call workflows. Workflows are automated processes consisting of one or more jobs that will execute different steps accordingly. They are triggered by events, which will then execute each job performing different steps.
I have here a repository for a robot framework project consisting of a simple login test for this particular test website. In GitHub, we can see a tab named Actions. In this tab, we can see the information and status of the workflows in this project. Going back to our code, to enable and create a workflow for this GitHub project, we simply just need to create a .github folder containing a workflows folder, which would then contain a YAML file for our workflow. Each YAML file is a workflow equivalent in our project. Let's view a workflow file and discuss the workflow syntax of GitHub Actions. We have your name, which is an optional name for this workflow. This is the workflow name that will be displayed in the Actions tab when viewing different workflows. As you can see here, this is named CI, which is also reflected as CI in GitHub right here. Next is we have on, which will specifies which events will trigger this workflow to execute. In this case, our workflow will run either when a push or a pull request is created in our project. Next are the jobs for this workflow. We only have one job for this workflow, which we name robot underscore test, as we will be executing a robot test for this workflow. And in this job, we can see the keyword runs on, which specifies what type of machine this workflow will run. In this case, a Linux machine hosted from GitHub's virtual machine. Then we discuss the steps for this particular job. The first step uses an action to check out to our repository. Actions in GitHub Actions are custom applications that perform a complex but frequently repeated task. These actions can be easily identified with the uses keyword and the preceding action slash, and then the action name and version. You can think of actions as keywords, functions, or tools we can easily use in our work. There are already a lot of actions in the GitHub Actions Marketplace where we can find different actions we can use. For example, if we search for checkout, we can see what the action will do and the usage of that action. Continuing with our workflow, we can also specify a name for a step in our job to describe and give additional information about the particular step. Here we have setup Python, which uses the action for installing Python to the virtual machine with the specified version of 3.11. The next step is the install dependencies, which uses the run keyword. This keyword executes the following commands in the machine's terminal, which are commands to install additional requirements to run a robot framework test. Lastly, we now run the robot framework test through the robot command and then the files path. Let's try to simulate a workflow run for this project. Let's say we want to change what tests will be executed by robot. So let's change the path and then push the changes to our repository. This will essentially execute the same test as we only have one test for this project. And since we push a change to our repository, this will trigger our workflow to execute. And going to the Actions tab of our project, you can see the progress of the workflow and its status. So we can view it a workflow run to view the information about that workflow. And we can see here the jobs currently being executed. So clicking here, we can see here the steps we specified for the job to perform right now. And it's currently running the test right now. And
and is completing the job. And there we go, the test has passed. And in this example, we were able to simulate the scenario where devs can have automated tests performed whenever they make code changes. Now, what if we want to enable our team members to execute our automated tests manually through our CI? We just need to add an event called workflow dispatch in our workflow trigger. I already prepared a file here with this trigger. This is the same test but with a different trigger. But let's say that this is our regression test. And we want anyone from our team to be able to execute this test manually through GitHub CI. So we just need to create a workflow file with this trigger. So going back to our Actions tab, you can see here this workflow that we created, regression test. And we can see that this workflow has that workflow dispatch event trigger. This way, we can now go right here to this button, run workflow. We can click this button and then we can trigger this test to execute right now. So let's refresh for it to load. So as you can see, we now have a running test right now triggered just by clicking this button, run workflow right here. And there we go. We now have a regression test we have that we can run through demand by going through this GitHub CI and then clicking the run workflow. Now, what if we want our test to be executed according to schedule? So I have here a workflow in Smoke. So let's say this is our Smoke test and we want to hit this test to be executed according to schedule. To do that, we just need to have this keyword schedule and then the cron command. This accepts 5 inputs: the minutes, the hours, the day of the month, and then the day of the week. So in this input, I have here specified for this test to be executed at 12 a.m. daily. So just adding this command, we were now able to have a schedule of this test. So going to our Actions tab right here, we can see this workflow smoke test. And I already had this test right here scheduled. As you can see, this test has been scheduled. And based from our workflow configuration, this test will be executed daily at 12 a.m. So that's it. That's for the demo for the CIC. How do we apply CI/CD on Sprint? After bug fixes has been validated, CI/CD will help to ensure core functionalities are still working as expected. If so, we can now close bugs or user stories. But if not, we can report and document issues that has been encountered.
So to conclude, shift left testing is a proactive testing approach that allows us to move testing earlier in the CIC in the LC SDLC. Agile testing is testing as soon as requirements or user stories become available. And when we say agile testing, we're using test charters instead of test cases. So that's a good reminder for most of us here. And also, it's possible to conduct test automation within Sprint if we agree to put it on the DoD and include it in your planning. We can utilize AI in our web, mobile, API test automation. And when we automate this test, we should ensure seamless integration to test the logic's flow and validating the functionality, data, and UI. We've shared this webinar to inspire you guys on how AI can be utilized. But needless to say, you should also do your due diligence to research the AI first before utilizing it. You can select which user stories or features you want to have the AI to generate tests for you. It is also important to note that AI can be used to build the base tests, just the base. And as mentioned by Janella earlier in the demo, she added her own tests. In Q360, despite the AI plugin availability, we ensure that we don't use it as a crutch. There was actually a time in the Maya Tech Talk last, I think it was November, that EJ was doing a live demo and the AI responded differently, and EJ had to fix it um, on the spot. But given that live demo, there were different AI responses that didn't fix the concern. So he had to show them first. He wanted to try that the AI can fix it, but then he had to fix it himself. So we really should still keep our creativity and technical skills and always hone it. If you're only relying on AI, then most likely you will be replaced either by someone more technical than you, or if that company believes so much in AI, then replaced by an AI. And finally, we should include test automation in the CI/CD so that the automated tests can be run by anyone at any time, may it be on demand or scheduled. It will also be automatically triggered to run the tests when there is a code change. So that's it for the webinar today, and we hope you've learned something today. We'll open the floor for the Q&A, and I'll have the rest of the team to join me on the stage so that we can answer your questions. Okay, so let's look at the questions from the top. First, we can remove the presentation there. So first, from Jaire Forbes, test automation in DoD is great, but in business we can't avoid urgent requests. What if there are customer requests that needs feature ASAP? I'll show it on the screen. What should be the approach here?
Hi, Jira. So I was the one presenting the definition of done. So for this, I would like to answer that. So if there are urgent customer requests, the ideal approach should be, of course, to be coursed through first by the product owner. The product owner decides who to prioritize best within the request to maximize the product's value. The definition of done can evolve over time, but never at the cost of lowering quality. From there, we can also negotiate of the new definition of done depending on the urgency. Also, if they are really high priority and they really need to be added, you can file them as a different ticket type and add an indicator that it is an urgent request. Therefore, the definition of done is not applicable.
Okay. So in other companies, what we do is we use a different ticket type. It could be a customized one like urgent request, or just put a label or any indicator that will tell the team that the DoD doesn't apply on this. Thank you, Jaire and Deo. And then the next question is from Tet SC. Letting Bard do all the debugging too, when you as a tester is also aware that you could have gone wrong in that. Too much back and forth seems too much time is wasted.
In the demo, we showed an example of how BART can debug code. However, as QA or QE tester, it's important for us to know when and where to leverage AI. This is especially valuable when encountering errors that take time to resolve or when there's no one available to ask for an assistant.
Thank you, Janella. And then from Poi Tayawa, question for QAs that will utilize AI tools. How will you ensure data integrity and security of past prompts? Questions to these AI tools. Also, have you encountered the result of an AI tool which is obsolete code based on what you tried on your test automations?
There's an option to turn the BART activity on and off and delete the activity. Yes, I've encountered obsolete code at times. On our end, we can review it or seek AI assistant for an updated version.
Thank you. Another one is from Gra. My concern now is the security of Bard in generating test cases that involves confidential data.
Yep. As mentioned earlier, there's an option to turn the BART activity on and off and delete the activity. So if the BART activity is off, Google does not use your new conversation to improve its machine learning technologies except where you provide feedback. The reviewed feedback, associated conversation, and related data are retained up to 3 years disconnected from your Google account. And if the BARD activity is on, Google stores your BARD activity to your Google account for 18 months.
Yeah, thank you. And as
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, you can either choose a different AI which aligns with your security policies, or you can be selective on where you're gonna use your AI plugins. And then from Roy Bandong, have you tried Robot Framework interacting with the Linux server via Linux commands?
Short answer, no. Long answer is Robot Framework is OS agnostic, meaning it can run on every OS you want, Windows, Mac, Linux, FreeBSD. But we haven't found the need to actually use a separate Linux server because we haven't been testing Linux applications. But in case there is, we can just SSH into a separate Linux server and then install Robot Framework from there, and you can do the test from that server.
Thank you. EJ, do you want to add anything, or Vernon?
Hello. Mark has a question. How do you distribute the test result via CI? So that's a very good question, especially if the tests are scheduled to execute. So one way to do that is to add an additional job after the test has been executed to obtain the results from the test. And then from that, we can use an action. For example, let's say we can use a webhook from Slack. There's an action existing right now in the GitHub Actions marketplace to use this action and to integrate Slack in GitHub Actions. And with that, we can send a message through Slack right there. So you can explore different actions in GitHub Actions, but uh, to just give you an idea, we can do it that way to add an additional job and then obtain the test and then send a message to the team members. So that's I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Sorry, we're running through the questions because we're past 3 o'clock. A question from Facebook user: what AI tool would you recommend that can integrate and run in our in-house test automation framework? Uh, we would not know because it's a proprietary framework, so we don't have any background on the said framework that you mentioned. But if you can include uh, some details, maybe send us a message on STP or over LinkedIn, then we can assist if you can give that. Then from Charlon, do you guys still use manual testing, or do you still do manual testing even if you almost do automation testing in your projects? Yes, how can you still implement it? So I'll try to answer that quickly. In some projects, what we do a lot of test automation. Say it's a content validation or visual validation, mostly in that project stage. And what we do is we write them the test in test charters so that it will not take a lot of time. And then we automate those, and only those that requires user experience validation will be given for manual testing. Okay, and then from Ruel, when do you onboard automation testers in a project doing Agile? And how do you create automation scripts to be in an in-sprint automation? How do you onboard automation testers in a project? Are if they're just doing automation, then we just make sure that we have the same practice in test automation, and then we provide them the tests to automate. But in Q360, because we are hybrids of manual testers and test automation, it's possible that our peer QE will be the one creating the test charters, and we will be automating that. But if in small projects or simple projects, you have only one QE, the same person will be doing the manual testing or the test charters and implementing those implementing the selected test for automation. How do you create automation scripts to be in an instant? Yeah, so we need to make sure that test automation is part of the definition of done, so that we have enough time allocated for it to be done within the sprint. So it's part of the planning itself. So earlier, they was able to show test planning, team capacity planning versus the time estimation for all the subtasks. So we need to uh, estimate those tasks, including test automation, so that it's incorporated in the time. And if the amount of hours provided for the from the team capacity is greater than the time estimated needed for the task, then we would be negotiating with the product owner to make sure that we can cover that. Unless one of the questions earlier is that if it's an urgent feature request, then we know that okay, this one is not the DoD is not applicable on this. Sorry if I'm wrapping. um uh From Marky. How do you retain history of the test results? I think saving it in Slack is troublesome when backtracking. The test results will always be in the test automation reporting. So for us in Robot Framework, it generates an HTML file and we can always go back to it, especially if you put a timestamp so that the report will be unique and then you can go back to it. Reg says, just curious about the mind mapping tool that you're using for test charter. Sorry, I didn't catch it there. Reg, we'll send a link of the YouTube recording so that you can go back. But we can also give some other materials to help you guys with the mind mapping. This is basically the exploratory testing. I'm not sure if that's part of the training that you got before. So, but we'll send reference materials as well for everyone. From Ronald, are the YAML file you showed earlier available for reference? EJ?
Hi Ronald, if this is
Oh,
for
right.
the Apito's eyes or for the CICD? If it's for the Apito's eyes, it's available on their tutorials page, which is aptitoseyes.com/tutorials.
We'll send the link as well. For EJ, is it available? CICD.
You can refer to the recording after this live stream has ended.
Thanks, Jericho. Okay, and then last two. How do you manage data maintenance due to program changes from old to latest version using AI? How do you manage data maintenance? Is this a test data or the test data? Can the Facebook user give us more information, please? Or Janelle, is this something you can answer already given this level of questioning? Test data, Janella.
Sorry.
Uh,
Um,
how do you manage test data maintenance due to program changes from old to latest version using AI?
I think you need to update it as well in the prompt when you're going to ask or seek an assistant for an AI.
Mhm. So the test management part is not really something that we can let go. Regardless if it's manual automation or with AI, we should always be maintaining them. And then last one, and then the rest you can send us through LinkedIn. Do you guys also have a self-healing test? Oh, this is nice. The self-healing automation part as your capability. EJ, is this something that you have encountered before? The self-healing part.
Usually we're the ones who update tests
Mm.
whenever there are any errors, for example, that has been encountered, and that is our job to update and to verify. And by executing the test, we will know if the output of the test is correct, and or if there are need for an update for that for those tests. So right now, I don't think that we have like tests that will automatically update right now,
Mm.
depending on how you coded it. But usually, we are the ones who need to verify if our tests are updated. We can do that, for example, through CI/CD, through scheduled automation run. And yeah, I hope that
Yeah,
That
actually
helps.
this is actually pretty new in the industry. But we have already seen some articles, and it's actually inspiring us to do another R&D for this one. But once um we're confident with what we have seen and implemented, we will be doing another webinar for it. Last one. I promise this is the last because it's a little bit intriguing. In Sprint, how do the QA manage their test creation, test automation in a 2 week sprint so the story will not feel over? As mentioned earlier, if we include it in the definition of done, so that would be an agreement between the team, including the product owner. So a part of it will be resulting to having less user stories being onboarded on the sprint. But um, in the long run, because we're able to include test automation, they will also see the benefit because instead of doing manual regression, we can run the automation. You can, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if Froylan saw it or was able to catch it earlier, but I've mentioned that, and even Deo mentioned that um, we will include test automation as a definition of done, and then it will be part of the tasks. So every user story, we should be providing time estimates, right? For say test creation, test automation, test execution, test script running. So those should be part, and even maybe some buffer for defect of bug fix validation. So that should be included in your time estimation per user story. And then it will be estimated all of those subtasks for all the sprints in all of the user stories in the sprint. And then it will be tallied between the total team capacity hours. So if it matches or the team capacity is higher than the time estimates, then we know that okay, we can cover everything. So that removes the frequency or the possibility of spillover. Okay, I think that's all that we can cover for now, but feel free to send us a message over LinkedIn. I hope you can follow us on LinkedIn. We'll be putting it as well on STP Facebook group, so that we can have you guys always updated on the articles that we put up and even the references that we can share with you. And we'll be putting the YouTube recording link in the SCP and YouTube as well. I hope you guys learned a lot, and thank you so much for spending this time with us, and see you next year. Have a great one.